Alright, welcome to the video. The first part of this is going to be an addendum to the last couple. I received comments and emails from people who'd watched them and they made some excellent suggestions, so I'm going to share those with you. And then I'm going to show you something I found in the frontispiece of the King James Bible that, well, you just have to see it because it's clearly a message about Oxford and honestly something I think that's really important. Okay, first, if you wanted to encode the messages Tudor Rose and the Order of the Rosy Cross, but were limited to only 5 letters with which to spell all of it, how would you do it? In video 49, I showed a 5-pointed star in the first sonnet found by Patrick Jennings. It's the same symbol that Alexander Waugh discovered on the cover of the sonnets. Read counterclockwise, the 5 points of the star spell T-O-D, then O-R, with the last point on the word rose. 3 points of the interior star also spell Tudor the same way. The thing is, if it's meant to be Tudor Rose, why is it spelled T-O instead of T-U? Maybe that can be answered by something Vince Galloway discovered. Vince noticed that, beginning with O-R, reading clockwise, along the bottom of the star, it spells O-R-D-O. We then go across to the top, read counterclockwise, and get Rose T or Rose Tau. Ordo is Latin for order, and Ordo Rose Tau, or Ordo Rosicrucians, means Order of the Rosy Cross. It's similar to a palindrome in that one way it can be read Tudor Rose and read the other way Ordo Rose Tau. The star has 5 points. One is spent on the word rose. That leaves 5 letters, O-R and T-O-D, with only 4 points remaining to spell Tudor and Ordo Tau. This is accomplished by having 1 point set perfectly in between the letters O-R. Patrick Jennings discovered the star spelling Tudor Rose. Vince Galloway noticed that, read the other way, it's Ordo Rose Tau. You can decide if it's one or the other, or if they're both correct. Personally, I believe the latter. Something else Vince figured out is, along the acrostic and telestic of the sonnet's dedication are letters spelling TT map by D. This is a great find because we believe that John Dee was responsible for encoding the sonnets. This is affirmation and a clue that speaks to the legitimacy of the dedication grid. The grid, explained in Waugh's videos Where Shakespeare Really Buried and in several of mine, has a map showing the location of Edward de Vere's burial. Rebus messages tell us, to the Westminster at South Cross Isle, St. Peter's, Edward de Vere lies here. In total, I believe there are 12 messages, 3 referring to Jesus and truth, 3 about where de Vere's buried, 3 that refer to a lie about a child in his line, and 3 with clues as to who that child is. And there's a 13th rebus in the middle, an offset OT Rosy Cross comprised of letters spelling Vere or Vere, stemming from the R equal to 17 and the word 4T. I explain all this in video 47. This is John Dee's TT or twin T map. Exactly what the 2 T's or twin T's are referring to, I'm still working on. After the letters spelling TT map by D, there are 2 letters remaining, SF. I sent what Vince found to Alexander Waugh and asked if he knew what the letters might mean. He explained that SF are Latin initials for sub finum, which means toward or near the end. Even though he didn't say for sure that's what the letters stand for here, Alexander did say that since John Dee died not long before or around the time when the sonnets were published, that the map was most likely created sub finum, or toward the end of Dee's life. Speaking of the sonnet, it's something I want to point out real quick. I'm not sure if anyone's noticed this before, with the words never before imprinted. The word ever is an anagram of Vere or a short form of E. Vere and is used throughout the codes for Edward Vere's name. When we separate ever from the other words, the rest of the line is 17 characters, 17 being Oxford's Earl number. E. Vere 17. It's nothing major here, it's just something I noticed. Okay, in my last video I was trying to show how I believe the Rosy Cross left clues in the 1611 King James Bible, letting us know they were involved in its production. In video 39, I thought I'd found 3 examples of 1740 in the frontispiece, but I'm going to make some corrections to that because I think the Rosy Cross are using ancient Greek to encode these numbers to get their initials RX, maybe because the Gospels were originally written in Greek. In the upper section of the frontispiece, there are 17 faces of followers of Christ, the angel and lion representing Matthew and Mark, who they sit next to, and in the middle is St. Andrew's cross, a very obvious X. 17 and X. In Latin, R is equal to 17. 17 and X is equal to RX, which are initials for Rosy Cross. However, I think there's something else going on here. This is an ancient Greek gematria chart Wa had in one of his videos. In Latin, R is equal to 17, but in Greek, there is no letter equal to 17. However, the letter R, or Rho, equal to 100, is the 17th letter of the alphabet, and the 22nd letter, X, or Chi, is equal to 40. So using ancient Greek gematria, the 17 faces and the X equal 1740, but they also equal RX, initials for Rosy Cross. I think they may not only be using Greek gematria values, but the number position of the letters in the Greek alphabet, similar to how it is with Latin, where the letter values are equal to whatever their number position is. The reason for this may be to honor Edward de Vere with his number 1740, and at the same time include their initials RX. Here's another example. This is found in the frontispiece inscription in between the 2 T's in the words translated and translations in the offset OT Rose Cross. Between the T in translated and the O or rose are 17 characters. I had this different in video 39, so I'm updating it here. From the beginning of the next line to the T in translations, which is also the cross and the rose cross, there are 22 characters. Looking again at the ancient Greek gematria chart, there is no letter equal to 22. However, the 22nd letter is X, which is equal to 40. So in between the first T in translated and the O or rose are 17 characters. The next line there are 22 characters to the T or cross, which begins the word translations. In ancient Greek, the 17th letter is R and the 22nd letter is X. So we have RX, initials for Rosy Cross. In Greek, X is equal to 40, so we have 1740, Edward de Vere's cipher number. Since these numbers are in between a rose cross and twin T's spelling translated and translations, I think they're trying to tell us something about who worked on the Bible. More on that in a minute. So far, I haven't been able to find a third example that uses RX, but this may be a 1740. Counting the letter T's from the beginning of the inscription with the words, the Holy Bible, the 4th T is the T in Testament, which is the 17th letter on that line. The letter T's go from lowercase back to an uppercase, which may be a clue that this is the 4th T. 17.4 T's, a homophone of 1740. I think the 17 faces and St. Andrew's cross stand for RX and 1740. Same with the 17 characters between the tau and rose and the 22 characters to the cross beneath the rose. Again, in ancient Greek, the 22nd letter is X, which is equal to 40. Maybe the T in Testament represents a third 1740. Now the reason why I'm going over all this, other than to update what I posted in video 39, is because I wanted to draw attention back to the words translated and translations, and the 1740 code in between them. You see, in the last video I showed how the dedication page has been typeset to the code God, Vere, and Rosy Cross. After I posted the video, I received an email from a correspondent named Jack, and he found something on line 6 of the dedication, which reads, "The translators of the Bible." Jack figured out that when you count the letters, the fourth T is the 17th letter on the line. Notice how the font changes. Letter 17-4T is a swash font, different from the preceding letters. It's kind of similar to the 17th letter on line 4 of the inscription. The fourth T from the beginning of the inscription changes to uppercase and is different from the T's on the line that precede it. The point to all this is, I know the people who worked on the Bible have been well documented, but having 1740 encoded with words referring to translators or translations in both the frontispiece and the first page of the Bible, I think is telling us something about who else had a hand in the work. Alright, now we're going to get into something new I found that tells us Oxford was a king, whatever that might mean. And it's right here in the inscription. I know some don't care for that particular subject, but please bear with me and let me show you what's here. First, let me get this out of the way. The Bible inscription is 53 words. The year 1611 has 2 dots or points on either side and is counted as one word. 53 is one of the degrees of a Pythagorean right triangle, and Baconians like to point out something about the number 53. I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. What I think is important about the number is this. The repeated count value of 53 is equal to 3 letter G's. G, of course, stands for God, and this represents God as a Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I think this is the reason why they made sure there were 53 words in the inscription, and also proves again that the 23-letter Latin alphabet is used with the Shakespeare codes. If 24 letters were used, like some claim, then 53 would be equal to 3-letter E's, which has nothing to do with God or anything biblical or Masonic as far as I know. Okay, now it's going to get really interesting on line 12. Personally, I believe 12 is a cipher for 4T. On line 12, the 47th word of the inscription is kings, and there are a couple things about the number 47 that are significant. One is that the gematria value of the letters spelling Vere add up to 47. And the other is that 47 is equal to 7 plus 40. I first mentioned the number 740 way back in video 13 after discovering it in the Bible. Along with 1740, I believed I was finding 740 codes. I went on the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship website and found out there were some who believed that Edward de Vere viewed himself as the royal consort Edward VII, which would have been his king number. 740 doesn't turn up as often as 1740, but it does turn up. Sometime later, Chris Johnson also started discovering codes he believed were based on 740, and put it together that 47 is 7 plus 40. Now check this out. Along the telestic, or right side, there are 3 T's with the 4th T right below the word kings. It's spelled out in the word majesty of all words. T-I-E pronounced T. Again, 3-letter T's along the telestic with the 4th T in majesty right beneath the word kings. Okay, now kings is the 47th word from the start of the inscription, but from the end, counting the Rosicrucian way, right to left, kings is the 7th word. 47 is 7 plus 40, and the 7th word from the end is printed over the 4th T in majesty, 47 and 74T both allude to 740, Edward de Vere's king and code number. And here's where they're letting us know this is referring to Oxford. The fourth T is printed beneath the word kings, but the Rosicrucians also hid something that, to get away with it, they had to be very careful. Take a moment and look. Can you see the two letters being made by the leg of the letter K and the loop of the G? I closed the loop because I believe that's how we're supposed to see it. Hidden within the extended lines of the G and K, we get two letters spelling OX. Here are the letters separated from each other. There's a teardrop-shaped O, not sure if that has any significance, and an X. Maybe they didn't close the loop because they wanted some kind of plausible deniability, but the intention's clear. It spells ox. This was really cleverly done. Again, it's printed over the TIE or T in Majesty, which is the hidden fourth T along the telestic. This was the frontispiece of the King James Bible, and a message like this had to be apparent enough without drawing suspicion. Okay, so it's King's Ox 4T. Another way to think of it is with a 4 and a letter T, or with 40 spelled out. Something I learned early on when I began working with the Shakespeare codes is that 4T or 40 sounds like 4D, the letters spelling the second syllable of Oxford. The fourth T printed below ox spells ox 40 or ox 4D. When ox 4D is spelled out, it's Oxford. King's Oxford, or read the Rosicrucian way, Oxford Kings. In video 47, I showed this portrait of Henry de Vere and Henry Wriothesley, suspected by some, like myself, to have been the son of Queen Elizabeth. I won't go into all the details again, but hidden in Wriothesley's coronet is rey, the Spanish word for king. It's above the number 9, which is interesting because as king, Wriothesley would have been Henry IX. There's another number 9 etched into the coronet, totaling 18, which would have been Wriothesley's earl number as the 18th Earl of Oxford, if he was the son of Edward de Vere. And when we read it right to left, I'm turning it over to make it easier to see, there's an OX in the middle, and the numbers are scored so they read X10, X10. In Roman numerals, X is 10, so these are 4 10s equal to 40. Ox 40. Again, 40 sounds like 4D, so this is telling us Wriothesley is an Oxford. Are these the Oxford Kings? I've mentioned before that maybe the references to Edward de Vere being a king is some kind of Rosicrucian terminology having to do with his position in the order. But I don't think the same title would have been given to Wriothesley, because if Edward de Vere really had been the leader of the Rosicrucians, I think Francis Bacon took over that role after his passing. Anyway, I found something else I believe may be telling us Wriothesley was Edward's son, which I'll show in the next video. Right now, there's more to the inscription. Compare the letters in Kings to the rest. The only other letter that extends into other text is the letter P in imprinted into the letter B in Barker, also on line 12. The lines make two more letters, E and V. Or maybe it's a lowercase e, but either way it's EV, and those are initials for Edward Vere. This isn't my wanting to see something that isn't there. It's an EV and an OX, and that can only be referring to one person. EV and Ox over 4T, Edward Vere and Oxford. The letters are drawn so that they cross into another and make other letters. None of the other text interacts like this. There's even a symmetry with the EV at the top and beginning of the line and the OX at the bottom and end of it. Honestly, after everything I explained, how can it be denied that this is what's here? And if you still have doubts, here's another clue confirming what I said is true. In part 1 of his videos, Where is Shakespeare Really Buried?, Alexander Waugh explains the difference between the two T's on the cover of the sonnets. One is in a swash font and the other resembles an ox's head. From this, Waugh was able to discover the name Oxford hidden within the byline. There's an ox's head in the frontispiece representing Luke the Evangelist sitting next to him. An ox is symbolized by its horns. And directly across the horns of the ox is the ox 4T beneath kings. I removed the text in between so you can clearly see that the horns line up perfectly with the letters OX. And I do mean perfectly. Alright, to review, the first sonnet has a 5-pointed star that read counterclockwise spells Tudor Rose. Reading the other way, it spells Ordo Rose Tau, which means Order of the Rosy Cross. In the sonnet's dedication are letters spelling TT map by D and SF, possibly standing for sub finum, meaning near or towards the end. A poignant indication that the sonnet codes may have been one of the last things John Dee worked on. There's a 17:4T when the translators of the Bible are mentioned on the dedication page of the Bible, which seems to agree with the 1740 code in between translated and translations in the frontispiece. And in the inscription of the 1611 King James Bible, Kings is the 47th word. The gematria value of Vere is 47, and 47 is 7 plus 40. 740 would have been Edward de Vere's king and code number as Edward the Seventh. Kings is also the 7th word from the end of the inscription, and is printed over the 4th T along the telestic, spelled out in the word majesty. I believe Kings, being the 47th and 7th word printed over the 4th T, is alluding to Edward de Vere's king and code number 740. Also with the word Kings, the K and G form the letters OX. Ox is printed directly over the 4th T or 40, which sounds like 4D. Spelled out, Ox 4D is Oxford. And on the same line as Kings, line 12, hidden in a similar way to Ox, are the letters EV, initials for Edward Vere. If you don't believe me, look for yourself, but what I just showed you is there. An EV and Ox over 4T, Oxford. I'm not sure if Barker, where the EV's found, has any significance, but I'm sure Kings and Majesty, where we find the Ox 4T, is definitely telling us something. Whether he was a Rosicrucian king or an actual king, to include Edward de Vere in the inscription of the King James Bible tells us how important and revered he was by this group of people working behind the scenes. There's more to Edward de Vere's story than William Shakespeare. Thanks to Vince Galloway, Jack, Patrick Jennings, CJ, and Alexander Waugh for their suggestions. If you have any, please leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching.